Hi, everybody. It's Patricia Berry from Patricia Berry Consulting, and I'm joined here today by the wonderful and talented Yana Zaro, who is a graphic recorder and is going to actually kind of put in pictures some of the things I'm going to talk to you about today, which is essentially what our subject is how to get over being weird about asking for money. So that's the basis of what we're doing. And so yeah, Yen is going to draw as I talk. And if you're looking for Yen in the future, you can find her at thepaperpusher.co. She does this for meetings and all sorts of other things. She's really wonderful. So what I want to talk to you about today is something that I discuss with my clients a lot. A big portion of my client base are people who are experts in their field and being asked to fundraise too. So executive directors, board members, CEOs, people working in academia in all sorts of ways. So a big part of what I do is that personal coaching about like, how can we create you as the fundraiser that you were meant to be? Not a cookie cutter fundraiser. There's nothing special about it. There's nothing magical. It's just really kind of finding what is your personal style and then just tuning it up to fundraising. And so what I do in these conversations, surprisingly, is have a really long conversation about our personal weirdness about money. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why I feel like some of that stuff is happening. And what I often counsel clients to do to get over it. So that conversation about, I don't know how to ask for money. These are sometimes the stances that people take when we first have these conversations is, I feel uncomfortable. I feel like it's begging. I feel like it's gross. I feel like it's weird when I know too much about somebody who I consider a friend or a colleague. All of that stuff is really at the basis, for me, I think an indication that they're working in a dynamic that is about transactional fundraising. And so what do I mean when I say transactional fundraising? Many institutions, certainly most, if not all the institutions that I have worked at over my last 25 years are in the method of fundraising that I would call transactional fundraising. That it's extremely high dollar stakes, and it is very much based on the gift, the gift, the gift, the gift. And so when I started to notice that when I was in New York and working at Columbia University, I first started to notice that everybody was talking a lot about metrics. And the metrics are very helpful, but I also think also can pull you away from a more meaningful way of doing fundraising. You know, so metrics are very driven on, if you make so many reach outs, so many asks, you'll get a certain percentage of no's, you'll get a certain percentage of closings. And that's how we tell our major gift fundraisers to fundraise each year. So what I really was starting to clue into, particularly as I was starting to do a lot of frontline major gift asks, was how scary it felt. Right? So I totally empathize with my clients when they say like, this is scary. I don't know how to ask for money. And what I've been reflecting on is that's actually an interesting indication that you're working in a transactional organization, because a transactional organization is based on fear. It's, you know, these metrics are not motivating because they're not talking about long-term outcomes. Right? They're not talking about, so one of the concepts that I work and write a lot about is how to create a 100-year friend, right? When you say, this relationship that I'm starting is going to last for 100 years. And what do I mean by that? I mean that the 100 years indicates that I'm going to have a relationship not only with this person throughout their lifetime, but also probably the lifetime of their heirs and their children and their sisters and, you know, all sorts of filial and friend relationships. It's in a 100-year trajectory. And when I put it in those terms for both myself and clients, you make much different decisions. You're not just focused on the amount of money that you're going to ask in the next gift. Now, I want to be really clear about this. Asking for money is actually your job when you're working in fundraising. So I'm not in any way saying that you don't ask for money, that you don't plan for asking for money, that you don't prepare to ask for money. But money becomes something that's a part of the conversation and not the only touch point or outcome of the conversation. So when you're working in these transactional organizations, all of this fear that often, particularly people who are responsible for fundraising but have not been trained in fundraising, so like I said, executive directors of units and organizations and all sorts of different aspects, you know, may be expert in their field, and now they're responsible for doing a whole bunch of fundraising, and there's a lot of pressure on, right? I've got a campaign, I've got a goal, I've got a this, I've got a that, and I'm required to make money and I have no idea how to do it. And every relationship feels fraught. It feels breakable. It feels like I can make one mistake and I'm going to lose $1 million donor or a multi-million-dollar donor. And so you end up getting into this extremely heavy, breakable, fear-based approach to fundraising. And again, it just becomes about the next gift. And so what I would say in response to that is, if you're feeling like the relationship can break at any moment based on the fact that you ask for too much money, you don't ask for money, you ask for something in the wrong way, you make some sort of organizational mistake, that's a great indication that it's probably not you that is at issue, but the goals of your organization are focused on that gift, and suddenly the power dynamics of the relationship become very breakable. And why is this a problem? So I feel like that weight on relationships is one of the things that is being revealed right now in thinking and practice in fundraising, is talk about an exploration of the inequalities and the power dynamics that are often unhelpful in nonprofit practice. So power dynamics. So let's think about breakable relationships, right? So if you're working in an organization and you have a potential donor or prospect that you have one shot in your mind to make your goal, make your metric for this year is, I've got to ask that person for the right amount of money. And if you're feeling like, I can make a huge mistake and this is very scary, that's an indication that you're not in relationship with that person. That person may have too much power, right? You don't want to. I'm very anti concierge fundraising. And that's the kind of fundraising where suddenly donors are given a lot of gifts and a lot of attention. Even in the COVID-19 days, we are hearing about donors to hospitals that suddenly got to jump the line to get vaccinations based on their role and the amount of money that they have given to an institution. That's an unhealthy power dynamic. And I get that some organizations certainly will be willing to cater to that. But if your donor cannot hear the word no, that goes against our values, it goes against our ethics, it goes against what we are doing as a public service, usually a nonprofit. If they cannot hear that word no and still maintain a relationship with you, that is not your donor. That is an unhealthy power dynamic. It is a weight that makes these relationships really breakable. So I guess some of the first conversations that I have with my clients who are experiencing that kind of fear is, if you're feeling fearful, I also want you to stop. It's not only your fear, but it's the organization that you're working in. Either you don't understand what the values and the vision and the style of fundraising is, or they are very steeped in transactional fundraising. And transactional fundraising is always in an emergency, and it is always about the next gift, and it's never about, or rarely about, where the next gift falls in line with the full relationship. So I think what I'm trying to say is that fear is real, and there's information in there. And that information is not necessarily all about you. It is often about you're having uneasy responses to what you're being asked to do in an organization that is based in transactional fundraising. So again, I'm just going to say what I often repeat with clients is that if you feel like this ask is fraught, if you feel like your role in fundraising is so fear-based that you're afraid to have the wrong conversation, you're afraid to say the wrong thing, you're afraid to make the wrong ask, that's a really great indication that you're basing too much value on transactional and not enough value on the relationship. So the money is really just, asking for money is just a step along the relationship. And I know this is really hard sometimes to hear, but I have done analytics work and research and have a good amount of data and experience, both anecdotal and actually using large groups of donors and behavioral analytics to tell you that if you focus on relationship, you will actually make more money in the long run. And that is really hard to hear, particularly if you're in an organization that is running solely on metrics. And I would say a specialization of only certain people can fundraise and only certain people can talk to donors. To me, that's again an organization that's not emphasizing relationship and fundraising. They're emphasizing fundraising over relationship. So check into that. That's the first thing that we start looking at, is if you're fearful or if you're afraid to make an ask or if it feels really uncomfortable. Sure, some of it is you, some of it is your experience, but also a lot of that is giving you some information about, I don't know this person well enough. Let's start by having a conversation. And have I been transparent enough about what I'm also doing with this organization, which is raising resources? So let's think about how to begin to lighten that load of fear, that anvil over that really, it feels so tenuous over that egg, you know, that sensitive little egg that you're trying to incubate, that is the donor relationship and the donor gift. So ways to begin to think about fundraising that's not fear-based is to think about it in relationship terms. And it's a relationship that includes a very transparent approach to talking about money. And again, if you're thinking about like, I want to keep this person as a relationship for 100 years, you make different decisions and you approach your fundraising in a way that is not quite so much, I need to catch this person out and I need to ask them for the right amount of money. And if they said yes too fast, oh my God, I've made a huge mistake. I haven't asked them for enough money. Well, what I would say to that is that if you come to a donor and ask for money and they say yes right away, it's not that you have asked for too little money, but it's that you have opened up a conversation about money that's going to last for multiple other gifts and going to last for as your mission deepens together, as your partnership deepens together. And let me also talk a little bit about what creating really an ecosystem of empowerment in your institution and a healthy approach to fundraising also looks like. So many institutions have specialized fundraising practices. They have somebody or a group of somebodies who sit, not usually in the units or the among the organization that they're supporting, and they are specialized people who talk about money. And that's your development group, right? So certainly highly skilled individuals usually get into this work because they are passionate both about relationships and about the nonprofit organizations that they work with. And often what I have experienced throughout my career is a feeling that only the fundraisers know enough to talk to big donors. And I would tell you that this is something that is holding your organization back and holding everybody back from speaking transparently and really in an empowered way about the mission of your organization. So one of the things that I have started to think about and have started to talk to people about is opening up that conversation not only to the other people in your organization, but also your volunteers and your board members. Excuse me. What that begins to do is you tell them through both word and deed how they're participating in the fundraising process. You are making an entire ecosystem of people that understand that this donor is in relationship with our organization, so they should be treated as partners. And certainly the money that they invest in our organization is important, but really what is more important is the relationship that we have with them. So it's not shameful. It's not giving too much power to people in the organization about knowledge, about people who are donors and people who are not donors. It is giving power to the organization to understand how they are also involved in this relationship, that some of this relationship is about money, but it's also about partnership and shared vision. So bringing that community of people together in your organization, letting them know, here's some of the things that we're working on. Here's our values as fundraisers. Here's the things that we do to convey impact. And this is actually one of the things that I try really hard to reframe people's thinking about. It's begging, because I often get that, that fear-based mind feels like it's begging, it's transactional, I'm asking for something that's not worthy. I would actually put to you that there's a different way to think about this. And I believe deeply in it. So I don't think it's just spin. I think that for me, it's a way to think about donors as partners. And that is, there is this very holistic experience being written about in some of the applied psychology journals about generosity and the health benefits of people who are generous to organizations and generous to other individuals with their wealth. They certainly get a health benefit, but they don't get the full health benefit until the organization has participated in that relationship by conveying that their gift had meaning. And how do you convey that their gift has meaning? You convey it by, this is the impact of your giving. Here are the people that it touched. Here are the outcomes based on your gift and people who have given in the same way that you have. Here's the things that we have accomplished together. So you don't get the full health benefit boost. And this is like health benefits of living longer, greater social connection, greater meaning in life, and reduced pain and increased survivability. So if you experience a health crisis, if you're engaged in a philanthropic endeavor that also lets you know the impact of your work, you actually have better health outcomes in all sorts of ways. So reframing that experience of asking for money into, do you want to come into this mission? Do you want to partner with me on this mission? Is our relationship built in such a way that we have conversations, sometimes hard conversations, about sharing wealth and about the mission that we are enacting and what your role is in it, as well as being able to say no if a donor is requesting things that are outside of your scope, right? So no concierge fundraising, that's what creates those very heavy breakable relationships. So this is just one opening conversation to think about how to make asking for money not weird. And I think if I had to put it down into a bulleted list, you know, one thing that I would say is if you feel fearful and trepidatious, there's a good chance that you're working in a system that is transactional. Whereas if you're feeling like it's just a conversation and it can have all sorts of outcomes and still maintain the relationship, there's a good chance that you're working in a transformational, relationship-focused fundraising experience. So I'm just looking a little bit at Yen's drawing. I think that's covered everything that I'd like to start with today. I'd be curious to know your thoughts on this opening conversation about relationship-focused fundraising. So thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll be back in future days with probably more conversations along this line. So happy fundraising, everybody.